Good evening. Welcome to the Manistee City Council, our meeting agenda of Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Heather, could you take the roll call, please?
Stand for pledge.
Call to order.
Stand for the pledge.
Pledge of Allegiance. Let's do the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heather, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bachman.
Here.
Mayor Beaton.
Here.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Szymanski.
Here.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Here.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Here.
Interim City Manager.
Here.
City Attorney.
Here.
DPW Director.
Here.
Planning and Zoning.
Here.
Police Chief.
Here.
Fire Chief.
Here.
City Engineer.
Here.
Roll call complete.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have done. Citizens' comments on agenda-related items. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on agenda-related items. Citizens in attendance will be recognized by the mayor for comments limited to 5 minutes. Letters submitted to the council will not be publicly read. Citizens may step forward and give their name and address if they wish to speak. Do I have anybody?
Jenny Pelton, 329 First Avenue, Manistee. Madam Mayor, council members, acting city manager, and city staff. I am here representing some of the members of the City of Manistee community. We have signed letters, which I will give to the city clerk, requesting you reject the proposed Lake Winds apartment homes project, including the 21-17 pilot ordinance and the municipal agreement. We feel there are currently enough subsidized multi-unit complexes in the City of Manistee. We feel that the Hillcrest complex is not even open yet, and let's see how that project goes and if it is really how it was sold to the City of Manistee. We propose the City of Manistee pursue a grant writer position. We would like to see what we had in the past with grants for rental rehab and owner rehab. Maybe people have forgotten, but the apartments above Fillmore and the building across the street, to name a few, were done with rehab grants. We also propose the City of Manistee look for federal and state grant funding for potential new home developments. Maybe a developer would be interested in the underutilized Renaissance Park as a place to build some single-family homes or townhomes. I'm sure there's a developer out there that would find that alluring. As a former Section 8 housing agent for 13 years, a subsidized housing manager, and a rental agent for 6 years, I understand the workings as much or more than anyone of subsidized housing. I'm almost 100% real estate sales now, and the demand is for first-time buyer homes and homes for young professionals moving to our community. I get calls for rentals, but they are looking for homes or apartments, not in complexes. We have homes for sale under $100,000 that we would love to sell to first-time buyers, but they won't pass the federal guidelines, and the sellers can't afford to repair them. These are the type of homes we'd like to see with some kind of assistance. There are many citizens who care about the future of Manistee and would probably love to be on an ad hoc committee to assist in researching options. This last-minute presentation of a subsidized complex that required quick approval is not what we want for our community. I've assembled a little over 130 signatures. We're happy to pursue more signatures when we have time. Due to the holiday weekend, there was too many constraints on getting to everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Jerry Helmignac, 267 Washington Street. I'm just going to read you the points from a petition that's about to be circulated mostly from the neighbors closest to this project. These points pretty much sum it up for me, so I'm just going to read it for you. We, the undersigned, oppose to the 64-unit low-income housing project on Washington Street and Veterans Oak Grove Drive for the following reasons. 1, location. The north side seems to have become the area of choice for low-income housing. This parcel is not large enough for the proposed project. Zoning regulation states maximum dwelling space unit per acre of 8. The proposed plan is 10.8. Families will not benefit from that exception. Despite the developer's walkability score, the reality is the amenities required for daily living are not walkable. The distance to the nearest grocery will limit the number of items that can be purchased at one time, especially for a mother with children. There's no pharmacy within walking distance, as there is at the locations currently serving the families, which are intended to be relocated to this development. Do we care about scores, or do we care about people? Safety. Safety is tied to location. This property is located on the corner of two heavily traveled streets. It is bordered by a working train track, an oil well, industry, and storage units. Marijuana grow facilities are planned across the street to the west and another to the east of the property. With these grow facilities comes a distinct odor. Just over the hill lies the Green Mile. This is not an appropriate environment for children. Traffic. Washington Street and Veterans Oak Grove Drive are two heavily traveled streets, including semi-traffic and city trucks daily. A traffic study has not been completed. Even in the absence of a study, the reality is obvious. The addition of 50 to 100 cars entering and exiting on that corner will create an undeniable traffic hazard and therefore a safety risk, literally an accident waiting to happen. We would highly contest any study that says differently. Also, the condition of the pavement on Quincy Street is already appalling. The potential increased vehicle traffic in that area will only add to the deterioration. Sewer capabilities. There has been no sewer study nor stormwater system evaluation completed. Even in the absence of a study, this reality is obvious. Quincy Street residents already have trouble. An additional 64 plus toilets and estimated 200 people using the system will cause an undeniable strain and therefore high potential for increased problems. Disruption to the neighborhood. Increased sound, lights, foot traffic, volume of people, and number of emergency calls. With people come problems, often intensified in an improper environment. For all the reasons listed above, this property is not appropriate for the people it is intended to serve. It's an unsafe environment, especially for the children, and poses a potential safety risk to the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to step forward?
Hello, my name is Chris Schultz. I live at 500 2nd Street. I wrote a little thing out also. So, where to begin? Well, I attended that planning commission last week. I'm here about the Lakewinds apartment homes, like people from Quincy. So I do have some additional concerns, but when I was there, I mentioned my own experiences living near low-income people. I don't know how many of you have attended that meeting, so I'll just repeat some of them. Well, some of the folks who live in these places, they're good people, but others have problems. Examples of negative behavior I have personally encountered when people living in such places have included drug dealing, prostitution, fighting in the street, barking dogs late at night. I had one bunch, they turned out to be home invaders. They did it in another place, but fortunately not where I lived. Speaking of home invasions, last week, there was quite an incident in my neighborhood. You may have heard about it. So there's this guy, he started breaking into people's houses. One of my friends chased him down the street. According to my friend, he seemed to be on some kind of drug and was not in touch with reality. But this happened in several houses just last week. And he was living in a triplex. I'm pretty sure it's a low-income triplex anyway. Okay, so some extra stuff you want to know about the meeting. So one commissioner mentioned that Century Terrace has over 300 emergency calls a year. This is important to consider because it was stated that people from Century Terrace will be transferred to Lakewinds. So not only is there going to be an assortment of problems from the Century Terrace tenants of this new location, there's also going to be various issues with new people coming into the complex. Somebody said they may even be from out of state, so we have no idea what they're like, what they do, what they've done in the past. So I would appreciate if the council would investigate the conduct of tenants at Century Terrace and other low-income housing around Manistee, and maybe you'll identify some common problems which you may not want to inflict upon the people living nearby, such as those who live on Quincy Street. As you're probably aware, Quincy Street has among, if not the worst road in the city. It seems to me they've been neglected for, well, a very long time by the city government. They haven't got new roads. Everything's gone to pot for them. And now the same government is being asked to authorize the dumping of a 200-person large problem in their backyard. Will there be any compensation program created to help the residents move out when their property values tank? Or are they just going to have to live with this problem, even though they strongly protested it? And lastly, do we still believe in consent of the governed? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to step forward?
Sharon Marsh, 231 First Avenue. I basically am disappointed in Manistee right now. We have the Miracle Marijuana Mile, we have the two grow facilities, and this is what, our third, fourth low income. There was the one that was supposed to go in at Olson's, and it has not, and I hope it does not. Again, they were going to move Century Terrace people there. We ruined Century Terrace. We would have ruined a complex there by Olson Lumber, and now there's another. Can't we ever think in Manistee that we can be upscale? We can be middle. We can be upscale. If we want new businesses to come to Manistee, we want more people to come to Manistee, we have to build Manistee as a positive place to live. Someone could come into Manistee and say, oh, look at these beautiful homes they're building. Or look at, here's a smaller complex, but it is for the young professionals, or even some professionals. Not everybody wants to own a home. Some people would like a really nice apartment. They can't afford the condos on Harbor Drive, but yet those have been beautiful. Dunes Drive are beautiful homes. Not everybody can afford those. We need to bring it down to workable people, people that are actually going to work every day and want a nice place to live. But we continue to downgrade our city. We downgrade our people. And I just hope that someday that we grow out of that stigma and think Manistee first, Manistee people first, and our growth, positive. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Anybody else? Hearing none, I think we'll move on. Consent agenda. All agenda items marked with an asterisk are on the consent agenda and are considered by the city manager to be routine matters. Prior to approval of the consent agenda, any member of council may have an item from the consent agenda removed and taken up during the regular portion of the meeting. Consent agenda items include approval of minutes, cash balances, revenue and expenses, notification regarding next work session, consideration of Ragnar Racing to hold a relay race through the city of Manistee, consideration of Manistee Catholic Central Homecoming Parade. At this time, council could take action to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Heather, will you take roll?
Councilmember Bachmann.
Yes.
Mayor Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Szymanski.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Unfinished business, we have none. Moving on to new business. Consideration of ordinance 21-17, service charge in lieu of taxes for housing. The City of Manistee Housing Commission and its development partner, LWAH Limited Dividend Housing Association, LLC, have requested a payment in lieu of taxes for the proposed Lake Wind apartment homes projects. The requested pilot is 4% of annual shelter rents. The pilot is being requested so they can access financing through MISHDA's low-income housing tax credit program. As an ordinance, 2 separate readings are required. If this ordinance is introduced at this time, it could be adopted at the next regular meeting. At this time, council could take action to introduce ordinance 21-17, service charge in lieu of taxes for housing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Since we don't have a second, the motion fails. Is that correct? The motion fails. Moving on to the next item. Consideration of a municipal services agreement for the Lake Wind Apartment Homes Development. LWAH Limited Dividend Housing Association, LLC, is proposing a municipal service agreement in addition to their pilot request for the proposed Lake Wind apartment homes. The agreement provides for an annual $200 per unit fee. The first payment will be $12,800 and will increase by 3% per year. At this time, council could take action to approve a municipal services agreement and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I hear a second? Hearing none, motion fails. George Heller, would you say a few words of what happens next?
With regard to,
Both motions have failed. I believe that means that the project is stopped.
well, depending on what the developer wants to do, they've requested a pilot, and without a pilot, I'm assuming that that project would not continue. That's, of course, up to the developer.
Okay, thank you. Next item, consideration of authorizing the purchase of a 2022 Western Star 4700SB snowplow and associated equipment. The current fiscal year budget includes the replacement of a 2001 Sterling plow truck. The cab and chassis have been priced through Municipal vendor D&K Truck Company at a cost of $116,336. The associated equipment package has been priced through Municipal vendor Truck and Trailer Specialties at a cost of $99,195. The total truck cost is $215,301. The budgeted amount is $210,000. Motor pool purchases of this size are typically funded through an installment purchase loan, which is bid out separately. At this time, council could take action to approve the purchase of a 2022 plow truck in the amount of $215,531 from D&K Truck Company and Truck Trailer Specialties. Could I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And we have a second. Any discussion?
I do. Didn't we just buy a plow truck like a year or two ago?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So I mean, this one really isn't, you know how I feel about buying cars and trucks. This one really isn't needed right off the bat. Like,
We have 10 different trucks, plow trucks. 2 of those are outfitted with salting capabilities, salting and sanding capabilities. 4 of those are the single axle trucks that do the most of the plowing of the streets. And then we have 4 tandem axles that also supplement plowing of the streets. and assist in hauling snow off of River Street. So what we have been doing, well, for the past 7 years, I would say, is we have scheduled out the age of the vehicles, and this is just not just the DPW, but the police, fire, all the motor pool. We have a very complete list of all of our vehicles, and we have estimated out their useful life. In a plow truck, about 16 years, 15 to 16 years is the maximum that all the dealers recommend before replacement. This one is 20 years old, and what we find is when we get beyond that 20 years, especially, well, it's a little bit shorter time frame on the single axles because they're working even harder. The double axles, when we get beyond that 20-year, we can repair them. Obviously, the repair costs start becoming very expensive, but for us, the downtime is more costly than even the repair costs. With only 10 trucks out there, and those trucks are used every day, so when we're without one, then it just takes longer to get the streets done. So these are on a regular rotation for replacement, and this truck is the next one.
But it's not breaking down right now to the point where you've got to put money in to fix it, right?
It does, yes.
They're breaking down on a regular basis
Yes.
to where, okay.
And I might add, this was included as part of the budget discussion, and was discussed during the budget as well.
Yeah, when we just had our auction, I think we netted $48,600 in that auction with all the used equipment. And I think without exception, almost every one of them had major mechanical issues that we took them out of service for that reason. So we've been running these vehicles as long as we can before we have those major failures. And when I'm talking major, I mean transmissions, engines. The plow trucks, the last 3 that we replaced have actually had cracked frames. 2 of the 3 have had cracked frames on them. So this is the age where that starts to happen.
So, Mr. Mikula, it looks like this truck is going to be doing sand and salt as well as plowing, correct?
This is it'll have a dump body on it, so it does not apply sand and salt. That's a different type of body that goes on them. This will primarily be, and when I say during the wintertime, these trucks are used year-round, but primarily their heavy usage is for hauling snow and plowing snow.
Okay, so this is what would be used to bring the snow off of River Street, places like that. Okay.
Right, and then the tandems are also, the last 3 that we've purchased, this would be the 3rd one, but they're sized so that these are the trucks that plow back the drifts, such as Cherry Street, down at the beaches. We put the large front wings on those.
Okay.
So these are the heavy-duty ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, the current truck, is it going to be sold at auction or is it going to be a trade-in?
They do not trade them in, but it would be sold at an auction or similar disposed of per city policy.
And just as a wild guess, what would you consider to be the retail value of a 20-year-old big truck?
So this last auction, we did auction off one of the tandem trucks. I believe that it went for $10,000 or $11,000. It's really the bidding environment. If you get 2 people that want them, they can go higher. We know this one stopped because somebody just really wanted it as a parts truck.
Okay. So it would pay the difference between the budgeted amount of 210 and the 215 purchase price?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, that's how it does balance out that way. And we used to try to put into these purchase memos, what we think the estimated value is. And sometimes just the lag time to get that money isn't fair. So we've just been looking at it at face value. When I compared this to the one that gets confusing for me, because I think council approved the last one over 2 years ago, but it takes 1.5 years to build these trucks. So this truck will not be in, if you approve it tonight, it will not be in service this winter. It will not it will not be plowing snow until the winter of 2022. There's just that long of a lead time. I forgot the point I was going to make. The cabin chassis was less than $400 more than the last one that we purchased. The difference in the $5,000 upsize was there was a $10,000 increase in the equipment costs. And that's just simply demand, and mostly the demand for steel and those parts.
Okay.
So are we gonna use the truck that we're taking out of service, we use it till we get the new one?
The truck that this would replace would have to remain in service unless we had a major breakdown of it. And we'll just have to service it for the next year.
I have another question. The whole truck thing just totally, I don't get it. Like, what is it? Do you have to buy a new truck every time you buy a vehicle? Like, isn't there like a 2019 model that nobody's used that you can purchase?
We've actually looked into that in the past, but plow trucks are custom made. Almost every vehicle now is custom built. The pickup trucks that we buy, most of them are just the stock municipal package. But these plow trucks are specifically custom designed as far as the cab and chassis on them. So we haven't had any success in looking for those or finding any. The other side of it is...
But that is a possibility. Like, they just don't make them like right when you order them.
Well, and speaking to the manufacturer, the last 4 years, they have been booking 100% of their manufacturing slots every year. So they're only making them for those custom orders. They're not making them and putting them on a lot someplace where you can purchase them.
That's what I didn't understand. Like, I didn't understand why it constantly had to be a new, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that's important to understand, when we talk about My Deal, the state of Michigan puts together the My Deal program, and it covers vehicles, but it covers everything from picnic tables and anything that the state government is going to use and purchase on a regular basis. So they actually bid that stuff out, and then the vendors that we use, we get to pay the state of Michigan bid prices on those. So like a pickup truck, if we're purchasing a pickup truck for $35,000, if I went to buy that off the lot, that would be a $55,000 vehicle.
Okay.
So we're getting substantial savings through that contract, and it's no different. That's how we buy our road salt. The state of Michigan takes orders from all the municipalities in the state, so they have a massive salt order. They bid it out to all the salt companies nationally, and then the company that's got the lowest price gets that contract for the year, and we pay those lowest prices. So we try to use that as much as we can.
Okay. You could have saved yourself a headache explaining that like that a year ago to me.
Oh, well.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Every day we live and learn. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other comments on the truck purchase? Heather, will you take roll call vote?
Councilmember Bachmann.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Szymanski.
Yes.
Mayor Beaton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving on, a consideration of the adoption of lot line adjustment form. At the July 1st, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, staff discussed the need for creating a lot line adjustment form to help facilitate issues within the city. Staff created a form based on other forms successfully used in the community. The Planning Commission moved to recommend this form and the $50 fee associated with it to the City Council. At this time, Council could take action to approve the adoption of a lot line adjustment form. Motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have one. Zach, what was the procedure for the good of the order? Explain what the procedure was before or until we have this form to have somebody adjust their property.
Yeah, and we actually just had somebody doing the same thing at the last planning commission meeting. So they, essentially two neighbors, one was selling his land in his garage to the neighbor. So what they would have to do is do a parcel split, which goes through the planning commission and then to you guys. And then the neighbor has to do a parcel combination, which I can do administratively. It's a long and arduous process. Both parties are, in that case, paying different fees, and this kind of helps streamline that into one process, as well as protecting them so they're not, the Land Division Act is kind of, I don't want to say unclear, tricky with this, and neighbors can do this now anyway, and they don't necessarily have to tell us. So we're helping them by not creating non-conforming lots or platted lots or lots of record aren't being divided or combined, whereas all of a sudden maybe they couldn't build a house there, or something of that magnitude. So this really helps facilitate it. It helps the citizens as much as it helps me.
And how much did the old procedure cost if they went in with the parcel splits? What was the cost associated with that last action?
So a parcel split costs $50, and I believe a combination costs $25.
Okay, so it would have been $75 they paid, and
Yep.
now it would be $50.
Now it'd be $50, and we would just treat it as if it were a lot split.
Okay.
How frequently do you expect this to happen annually?
More and more. I've had 4 to 5 in the last 5 months, I'd say. So I'm sure as Jermaine knows, the market's hot and everybody's rearranging, so.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. When these lot adjustments are approved, is there a requirement that they register with the Registered Deeds Office that this has happened? Because I know it's a headache for title companies to discover at the very last minute that there's been a survey done, there's been an agreement made, nobody knows about it. It can delay things. I truly believe that if you're going to change your legal description, it needs to be registered.
Right, and when this all goes through and everything is approved, I reach out to county equalization and inform them that, hey, this has happened, so they're expecting that new property description to come in.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you for your explanation. Any other discussion from the council members on this topic? Hearing none, Heather, you can take roll call.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Szymanski.
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Mayor Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Bachmann.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Notices, communications, and announcements. We will now hear a report from the Manistee County Historical Museum and the Historical District Commission. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
There you go.
Well, Swans, I did that purposely, by the way, too, so. I'm kidding. Very happy to be here again talking to you about the exciting world of local history. I wasn't here last year because of COVID-19, and so we decided not to do it. And so I'm going back actually about to 2019, and we'll go back and we'll talk about a couple of those things that we did in the latter half of 2019. Basically, I'll pick up right where I left off. So 2019 was the sesquicentennial of our city, and to celebrate that, the museum put together 13 different events throughout the entire year, presentations, walking tours, stuff like that. The last time I talked to you, I believe, was in September of 2019, so we'll pick right back up. We did a tour in late August called To Maxwell Town and Beyond. We worked with the Department of Transportation to do a trolley tour, and we did a guided tour all around Maxwell Town, because that's a really cool part of the city, and there's a lot of those cool structures that often get overlooked, that are really historic and really neat. And so we decided to kind of do that and kind of pay attention to that as well. And it went off really well. A couple months later, the Red Hatters decided to give me a call and wanted that same tour. So we did that as well. And there's a picture of the Red Hatters who were on that tour back in October of 2019. Later in September of 2019, we did a walking tour of the Hill Homes Part 2. Part 1 was in May, and Part 2 was done by our volunteer, Tina Croct, who does the 100 Years Ago column in the newspaper every week. And she did a tour of basically the homes from all along Maple Street, basically from 1st Street all the way to about 6th Street, and on both sides of the street, and did a wonderful job with it, and we had a really nice turnout for it. In early November, we partnered with the North Channel Brewing Company and did a presentation on Manistee's industry called How It Was Made. And we held it right there in the brewery, and they gave us tours of the brewery production itself, and were very accommodating, and they did a really nice job in helping us put that on, and that was a lot of fun. In November of 2019, I wrote a play called Vanderpool and Field Resuscitated, and I performed that with the MHS Drama Club. Needless to say, we did not win any Tony Awards for this, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a good way that myself and drama club teacher Amanda Fayan to kind of get kids involved in local history and drama itself, and so really had a fun time doing it, and I hope to never write a play and perform it again. But it was a lot of fun and really had a good time doing that. And then we did a small exhibit, pictorial exhibit at the end of 2019 as well. And so all in all, it was a lot of fun. We had a really great turnout from the community, and we're really happy to help celebrate Manistee's sesquicentennial. 2020 was basically a year to just, this is Edward Buckley, by the way, and I put a face mask on him, so I thought it was kind of funny, but I'm kind of over it now. Face masks are required when visiting the museum. We didn't really do anything in 2020 to really, no presentations, no exhibits, anything. Just the main part was to keep staff and volunteers and visitors safe and healthy, and I think we did that. So 2020, of course, like everybody else, was kind of a down year. But we did about 957 people, and that's about a third of what we normally see on a given year. So if things were a little tight, as you would imagine, like everyone else. But all through that we had about 43 researchers, which is a little bit lower than what we normally see. But these are people researching their families, their properties, and whatever else random question they have that they wanna ask. On a normal year, we get people from, believe it or not, all over the country coming to Manistee for a couple days to do research at the museum. And it's always fun to work with these people and try to answer their questions and get to know them a little bit. And some of them I keep in touch with on a semi-regular basis. So a little down than what we normally see, but for the most part, in 2020, we'll take what we can get. Zach is going to be talking a lot more about the Historic District Commission, but these are just a couple of the highlights that the museum, or myself, as well as the commission, worked on from 2019 to the present day. Of course, we worked pretty closely with the architect and West York College on the West York College building. They also contacted me to do some history of local commerce and local businesses, and so I made, found the photos and wrote all the copy for these really cool decals that are inside the building. I don't know how many of you have been inside the building, but it really turned out really cool. And so I think there's like 12 or 13 of these inside the building. So when you walk in, you can see them all there, and they all correlate to local history as well. We spent quite an amount of time on the 359 River Street, which is now one of the several Edward Jones investment offices we have here in the city of Manistee. But it turned out really great, and really happy to have worked with Kyle Mosier on that. The Guardian Angels Catholic Church, We worked pretty closely, I've worked pretty closely with the historical preservation group there that has gotten the building on the state register, and I believe they're going to be putting a state register sign outside there on the grounds, and we were able to approve that and work with them pretty closely on all that cool history inside that building. And then, of course, the Vogue Theater, this is something that came up back in May. We spent some time on attempting to figure out how they could safely take out the tile that was a part of the original tiling on the exterior of the 1938 building, and I think it turned out pretty good. So Zach will, I'm sure, talk about this a little bit too. These are just a couple highlights that we spent a good amount of time on. Articles for the News Advocate in 2020, I wrote 54 articles, and this is something that my predecessor, Steve Herald, started in 1976. I always like to mention it. Since 1976, myself and Steve, we've written approximately 2,700 articles for the News Advocate, and that's just the tip of the iceberg when we talk about Manistee's history, but we find it's a good way to engage the community in local history, and we're very happy to continue to do that, and plus it's a lot of fun to dig around in those old newspapers and maps and try to find all that cool stuff. So. I also do the daily looking back summaries in the News Advocate, 20, 40, 60, 80 years ago. Once again, it's a good way for the community to get involved and to engage in local history. And it's always kind of funny to get a call from someone who might be a little upset that I put their name in the newspaper because of something they did 40 years ago, but oh well. I don't put the bad stuff in, so. 2021, what did we do in 2021? So far this year, we partnered with the library to do a series of Zoom presentations. I did one back in April on the Smith Street Bridge. Local historian John Perchbacher did one on some of his favorite Victorian mansions here within the city. Tina Kroc did one on the process she does to write the 100 Years Ago column every week. Kurt Schindler, former Michigan State Extension Office and former county planner who was a volunteer at the museum and on the board of the museum, did a talk on Depression-era programs that we still enjoy today. Mr. Perchbacher then did one on the Babcock House where he lives and how the process that took to get him on the state and national register. And then at the end of this month, I'm doing one on the history of the Memorial Bridge, which is a sequel to the Smith Street Bridge. So that's been a lot of fun, and the library's been great to work with as well. And then this summer, continuing to October 1st, we did an exhibit called Totally Awesome 1980s Pop Culture in Manistee, where we featured games, toys, movies, books, music, theater, and photos, all from Manistee that happened in the 1980s. The main thing here was to do something a little bit different and kind of fun, because as great as the logging industry is, it gets kind of boring after a while. So we wanted to do something that we had never done before, and so this turned out pretty well. We had really good attendance throughout the month of July and August. There's a little exhibit from our local video stores, music shops, the Vogue in the 1980s, the Ramsdale Theater in the 1980s, and just a couple of the things that we had there that we garnered from a lot of the volunteers and myself's personal 1980s collections. So. And then just in time for September 2021, we're going to do Museum Week at the museum. September 21st is going to be Genealogy Day. September 22nd is going to be Water Street Walking Tour Day. September 23rd is going to be Steve Herald Day. Steve Herald, as I mentioned, is the predecessor at the museum. He was a director there for 35 years, and he has officially retired as of February. Still helps out a little bit. But it's just a day to kind of honor Steve, people to come in and Steve can regale them with exciting stories of the museum. I don't know, but we wanted to find a way to honor Steve, and so we figured we just devote a day to him. And then on September 24th is Research Your Property Day, and then on September 25th is Museum Open House Day. Just a week of activity. People can come in and find out about their family. I will help them with that, their property, and the Water Street Walking Tour should be a lot of fun. Just a way to kind of have a week of devoted to just a couple different topics. So. I'm also going to be working with the Visitor Center on a new walking tour booklet that will be hopefully hitting the streets in 2022. There's going to be several different components to that. One of them is going to be tribal history, which we're really excited to include. There's going to be additional homes on the walking tour, additional businesses on River Street, and a couple other things that we've got planned. Everything's not quite ironed out just yet, but that's something that the museum is working really closely with the visitor center on, and so look for that in 2022. There are a lot of people, believe it or not, who take the booklet and walk around and tour the city and want to know a lot more about those buildings, and so they come down to the museum, they ask us a lot of questions. But it's been a very positive thing and a very successful thing for tourists and actually locals to do, so we're excited to continue to work on that. In regards to the Lighthouse, as some of you know, and some of you may not know, in 2011, the city signed the concession agreement, or the museum signed the concession agreement with the city in order that we would maintain the Lighthouse. In 2016, we were able to have enough funds to paint the outside of it, and the paint job has kept up pretty miraculously, and it's supposed to do that, so hope, knock on wood, that it continues to do so. But a part of that was also to get the interior done and painted and fixed up so the public might be able to go up in there, might be able to look around at least. That's actually a 4-phase project with just the lighthouse itself, not counting the catwalk. There's about 4 phases, and that total is about $160,000. We're at about $26,000, so we got a ways to go yet. But of course, with everything with COVID-19 and things were just kind of put on hold for a while. That includes grants that we were looking at, and we hope to continue to reach that goal as time goes on, so people can get inside and take a look around there. So I think that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Well, I want to say it's great that reading those articles in the paper.
Thank you.
People up to date, and they can see what happened, where we're going.
Thank you. Fun to do.
It's amazing your enthusiasm and energy. You just keep on hitting it. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And you do a great job with the research.
Thank you.
Anybody who's ever come down to the museum asking about their house or something in Manistee, you do a super job. So
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mark,
Right.
I want to thank you for helping out a party that bought a house that I had listed that was at the corner of Daniels and Fifth Avenue a couple of years ago. It was great for you to actually research all the property information.
It's always, stuff like that sometimes takes a couple hours, sometimes it takes a couple days, sometimes it takes a couple weeks. So it all kind of depends on how far down the rabbit hole it actually goes, but it's always a lot of fun. And one of the perks of being at the museum is that you really learn something new every day. And so that's one of the aspects of being on the job that I really enjoy, and getting to meet people and find out the history of their homes is one of those things that's always a lot of fun. So I'm happy to do it.
I just have one more question.
Yes.
When you were on your tour and you stopped at the brewery, did they give you any free samples?
Well, I had to give a presentation, so I wasn't going to be slurring my words and plus I had to drive home too, so. I wasn't, so they, Mick, you were there, I think.
the short answer,
Did they give us free samples?
tasting actually right out of the barrel.
Oh, is that right? Well, I missed that then, so I'm too busy talking, but it was a lot of fun. I'm glad they were able to accommodate us, as well as all the other businesses. It was really kind of a cool community thing to do with everybody helping out, and so it was a lot of fun. So.
It does sound like fun, and your enthusiasm is infectious. I'm going to have to be down there on your Research Your Property Day. I'd love to learn more about
Please
my
do,
own.
please do, absolutely.
And I know a number of people are really looking forward to Vanderpool, the sequel.
The sequel, well, let's not go there with that, but anyways, thank you very much, I appreciate it, thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Next up. Mike Secola.
I don't know if you, probably not, I'll just move, oh, yeah, it will, look at that.
Hello, so I'm just gonna kind of cover the HDC here.
Okay, you're
This-
filling in for Mike.
Filling in for Mike. So this not only gives you guys an update and it gets the HDC a chance to kind of tell you what they've been up to, but it also fulfills our RC requirements, which I know the city's very excited about, and they should be. So that's killing a lot of birds with a lot of stones here, or a single stone. So I think I just kind of want to start with just what the HDC does, because I think it's kind of one of those commissions that's kind of tossed to the side, kind of forgotten about. But the HDC is charged with overseeing the city's historic district. The establishment of the district allows property owners to contributing properties the opportunity to apply for tax credits. That's huge. Our HDC is actually is our downtown, and that's not always the case. So I think that's something in Manistee that we really need to utilize. This second part here I really wanted to include as well, because it's another thing that I think it gets kind of forgotten, saying that all properties within Manistee Commercial Historical District must receive approval from the HDC for additions, any alterations to the exterior of the building, change of paint color, and signage. I kind of cover that later in the meeting, but that's just something that, we want to keep everybody on the same slate here. We want, we all want it to be beautiful, but we're going to try and, do it the right way. So, this is just kind of how I mentally break down the HDC. We're working currently towards some enforcement and compliance issues, issuing appropriate permits to anyone within there, and researching new ideas. How can we get creative and solve some issues? The issuing the appropriate permits is, I have to say that Mark is a huge help there. He has the ability to sign off on a lot of stuff that I don't have to bring to a meeting, and it saves me a ton of work. So I just wanted to thank Mark on record, because that is really huge, and his expertise is really appreciated. So I'll just run through some of the permits we've had just this year. So, and not all of these are completed. So this one, it looks like it is 350 River Street, the River Street Station. I think actually, Mark, you approved the blues there? I did. Yeah. So I think it looks great. Keep going here. There's some vinyl window graphics in the 354 River. Again, it looks nice there. 321. So this is one that isn't quite done yet. They're tidying up the sign and working on when it's going to get in there. But they had a projecting sign there that we've the commission is allowed to. Commissioner Mark has allowed for us to put it back in there. This is at the Vogue. So Mark kind of alluded to this. Those tiles that they were literally just seeping. There was a crease right in the middle there, and those are actually interior tiles from 1938. And that was really the main issue, is that they were interior tiles, not designed to be outside, let alone in our harsh climate. So they saved as much as they could there, and they actually saved that whole strip that is made to match the brick. As much of those were saved as they could for replacement of these ones, in case those ever, go south. So I thought that was really important. I'm really glad they decided to do that. Again, at 354 River Street, the brick right there, you can see kind of at the bottom. That's been approved to be painted. Those bricks had just missed the deadline of what's considered historic brick that's not allowed to be painted in the district. So this one actually went to the Historic District Commission. They thought, you know what, it's going to make the building look better. It's towing the line. It's still allowed to be painted and not considered historic, so let's just go for it. I think it's going to look really nice when it's done. Mark also alluded to the 5th Street, the historical marker there. I imagine it's going to go right there in that green spot. I think that's kind of what they had referred to there. That's one of those rare cases where the HDC has their district, but then they also have purview over the select properties that are registered with the historic district through the state, or the Historic Preservation Office, rather. Just some routine maintenance here, that repairing the door in the apartment window right there. Looks really nice. This is Mark's wheelhouse right here. So they just got approval to replace the screens, do the little repairs, repair work right there on the museum. So looking forward to seeing how that looks. Over on 411 River Street, that was another permit that got issued here to extend that. There's been some work moving forward on it. Same with 347 and 349 there. So slow but steady. It kind of brings me into the next slide of enforcement. The HDC, we've been looking into different avenues to kind of prevent these long-term projects like this, and just kind of kicking the can down the road. I've been having a lot of conversations with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, a couple other entities and different people in different communities, and how they I don't want to say stop this, how they prevent this, or go as preventative measures, not reactive ones. So performance bonds and liens are different options we're looking into. I've been working with George and kind of talking through some different options that really what's going to be easiest for us and what's going to make the most sense for the community, because at the end of the day, you know, I don't think Jeff wants to go in there and have a bunch of his guys trying to fix these places up. So we're trying to figure out the best approach that's going to fit our needs. The HDC held a June 29th special meeting for the social district. There was some signage. It was already made in stickers and things. You know, I'm sure you guys have been down there on the sidewalk there, and it needed HDC approval. So this is one of those cases where the HDC really, you know, hopes to have these ahead of time. They just want to give their final blessing on something like this. In this case, it was a non-issue. It seemed appropriate that, you know, there wasn't the flashy colors that didn't really go with the district and things like that. Murals, that's the big one we've been working on now. So as it sat, I think before this last week, murals were only allowed to be in areas that had already had a designated mural, and you had to have photographic evidence probably from Mark, that showed it was there and what it was. The HDC wanted to expand that, so I looked into some other communities across the nation and across the state. I worked a lot with SHPO, the Chamber, DDA, with Mark, and just this last meeting they approved to allow for murals throughout the district on areas that are not, you know, that you're not stepping on the toes of the other rules. So an example being, you're not going to paint over brick that's not been painted. But I'm excited to see that. I hope there's some, you know, grant funds or even private funds or however it works. I'm really excited. I think that's going to really change the downtown and the look and really bring a community together. The HDC really wants to foster relationships with more commissions and more groups. So the DDA, the Planning Commission, the Visitors Bureau, they really want to work together and work on that placemaking that our downtown has. And there's so many moving parts. I think it's really important that these other entities work together with them. So just a couple snapshots of, I think this is 1895? 1938, I was close.
Why did it look much different?
And then since 65, I believe. See, that's why we have Mark. So as you can see, I'll just kind of flip back and forth. I think I just like looking at these because it's just so different, and you know, what's it going to look like in another 50 years? You know, that's decisions we make every day. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Yes, I have a bridge.
Yeah, where's the bridge?
We've argued for how many years with the Rosemary buildings? Somebody's given them permit after years. Why do we keep doing it? Now we've given them another year to do something, and it's the same junk. I mean, it's a board by board he's doing every night. I mean, come on, people, we gotta stop this and let him sell the buildings if he has to. This is ridiculous. I mean, now we're doing the Parsons. Same thing, sell the buildings.
It's a tricky subject here. I know there was some court cases that George was involved with, and that was not helping the decision-making of the HDC. I don't know if you want to mention anything on that, George, but...
Didn't the court give
No,
them here?
it's fine if you don't.
I don't know what was said.
We don't have to get into that.
I didn't go to court, so I don't know what was said up there.
Yeah.
The judge probably ruled to give him another year. But I think that I had to push for him to give tickets to these people.
Right, and that goes...
Still sitting here with this thing. I think this is getting ridiculous.
Yes, and that's kind of where the HDC is standing in the performance bond and the liens, and how do we prevent this? I mean, I know a big part of the blight task force was kind of sparked from these projects right now. So they're looking to, in the future, being proactive, and you know, wherever the courts take this project, you know, in the coming year, we'll see what happens. I'm optimistic.
You know,
I think.
Harvard wrote us letters, other people wrote us letters, and that's why I kept pressing every time we had a meeting, but to do something, and nothing got done. Now we give them another year. Ridiculous.
Questions?
I have a question. Two questions, actually. You said that murals are now being allowed. Would that be something that somebody would design and go through you to be approved?
Yeah, so the HDC, would come to me first, and I'd kind of process that, and then get it to the HDC, where they would ultimately make the final decision on the appropriateness and scale and things like that.
And does that include like the Riverwalk area too? Or?
Yes, so that's another point I think I forgot to mention there. The Riverwalk is part of the HDC, so there are, I know, working with Mark at the Chamber, he has his eye on a retaining wall to have some sort of mural on it, and I think it's a great idea. So there's a lot of options, and we just last week met with the state coordinator from SHPO, and he had kind of advised and coordinated and done everything he does. He pointed me to Public Act 169 of 1970, where it just kind of highlighted the resources the HDC has purview over, and it says publicly or privately owned historic or non-historical buildings, structures, sites, objects, features, or open spaces located within the district. So it really encompasses a whole lot of things. And in the Riverwalk, on that mural, I know there's been talk for Jeff with the benches and replacing those with maybe some composite and keeping like the wrought iron look, and that I think that's been approved. So
My second question. So when a store owner downtown buys a place, they have to go through you to make sure that if they make any changes to it, it is historically correct, right? Has that ever deterred anyone from wanting to have a place downtown, like cost-wise or anything like that? The requirements, has that turned anybody away?
As far as achieving a certificate of appropriateness, the fee is nominal. It's $25, $50. I have so many off the top of my head. I think it's $25. So I would suspect it's not a cost issue as far as that. Now, we do have a case where someone had put in windows that was ultimately deemed those aren't appropriate. Those are a little too modern. And his argument was, well, these are the best windows money can buy. Well, that's not necessarily what we're looking for. We're looking for the look, not the I don't even want to say quality. He's ultimately, I've brought it up enough to him that I think he's probably just gotten annoyed with me, where he said, okay, let's just make this work. What do I need to do to finish this out? But as far as any steering people away, I wouldn't say here is any more than any other place that has a historical district.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
I didn't realize you were involved that deeply with the historic district.
Involved in a little bit of everything.
Moving on, citizens' comments, concerns and comments from the citizens. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on municipal services, activities, or areas of city involvement. Citizens in attendance shall be recognized by the mayor for comments limited to 5 minutes. Letters submitted to council will not be publicly read. Good evening, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, I wanted to beat the rush. Thad Taylor, 581 8th Street in Manistee. I'd like to comment on statements made by Mayor Beaton at the August 4th City Council meeting to justify her no vote on my appointment to the Downtown Development Authority Board. Mayor Beaton said, and I'm not going to read everything, I'm just picking out the points that affected me, said the DDA and the new city manager coming in, I wonder how that would play out. And then the one that bothered me the most was, may undermine the new city manager's ability to get fully acclimated. I'm extremely offended by Mayor Beaton's comments. I served over 15 years in several communities as a city manager, was a member of the Michigan Municipal Executives Association, the International City County Management Association, and worked to enhance the city manager profession. I find it very odd that Mayor Beaton can believe that once retired, I would actively seek to undermine the new city manager if I was appointed to the DDA board. That's ridiculous, irrational, and hurtful. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens' comments?
Clinton McKibben Copas, Executive Director of the City of Manistee Housing Commission. In 1967, the City of Manistee Council signed an agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that not only built Century Terrace, it built all the homes in the scattered sites in 1969. In 1978, the City of Manistee Council once again signed a contract with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which built Harborview, and then all of the homes that were built after 1978, which weren't many. Most were built in 1969. And that contract continues year after year after year, known as the ACC. Now my mind is racing on it's the contract that continues to bring in our funds. The federal government sends into this community over $1 million a year just in trying to operate these facilities based on what monies are appropriated by Congress. Additionally, over $2 million a year comes into this community through people who are considered poor, dangerous, druggies, people you don't want as your neighbors, people who are on Social Security disability, people who are on Social Security retirement, people who are on state disability, which is hardly any funds at all. These are our neighbors. These are citizens of the City of Manistee, created contractually when the ordinance for the City of Manistee Housing Commission was created. Tonight, you have turned your backs on the homes in which the federal government invested upon agreement with this city. Why the north side? The federal government has determined that there is an opportunity zone in many communities. There is one opportunity zone here. It is the north side. It is rich for development. It is publicized and eager by the federal government to develop. The people who were to move into Lake Winds were not from Century Terrace, were not from Harborview. These are the homes on Vine Street, 12th Street, Concord, 10th, 6th. These are people who are new mothers, single, from abused relationships. These are people who have been physically abused in some cases and moved here from Traverse City is one example, lived here long enough to get herself and her daughters on her feet, and then turned the house back over so someone else could benefit from the support. These are people like Bobby Stamps. How many people read about him when he died? He was well known in this community. Century Terrace was a place for him to live. Not much money, but a place to be cared for, loved, and accepted. We have an agreement with Central Wellness in which people who are suffering different levels of disabilities, some mental, some physical, some developmental, who could only live previously in adult foster care homes. We now have them living at Century Terrace and in the scattered sites. And Central Wellness maintains a relationship with these folks to support them. I don't know what I feel tonight, other than the city has abandoned its own investment. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments?
I just want to know if I can make a comment.
Please step to the podium.
In Sharon Marsh, 231 Fifth Avenue. In 1978, my husband and I moved here with our family and ran a business for 18 years. At that time, we actually had food service. We were a grocery store. We delivered to Century Terrace and Harborview. It was a prime place for the senior citizens to live. My mother lived there for 6 years. It was wonderful. There was no fear, there was no drugs, and there was no sex in the hallway. Move forward to about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a home health service that started in Manistee called Real Life Living, and they started their office in a home at Century Terrace. The stories that I heard about Century Terrace broke my heart. So yes, the government gives us money to run these places, but run these places for what they were meant to be run for. I understand people on SSI, Social Security, disability. I have a brother-in-law that is slow. He would be an ideal candidate for Century Terrace. Granted, he is over 55, but again, we don't have to worry about the drugs and we don't have to worry about the problems in the hallway. We need to get Century Terrace and these other places back to what they were when they were first built, and the rules and the safety. So I just wanted to make a comment because I know what Century Terrace used to be like, and it's not like that today. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment?
Yeah, Chris Schultz at 502nd Street again. I just wanted to thank the council real quick for turning it down, and I'll comment a little on what was said by the gentleman from the Housing Commission. First of all, okay, maybe my memory's bad, but I could swear either him or the gentleman standing next to him at the Planning Commission said people were going to be moved from Century Terrace to Lakewoods. I will go and watch the video again and see if my memory is faulty. Maybe it is. Second of all, while the federal government may make offers, it's up to us to decide as a community whether or not we want to do that. We have a federal system for a reason, federal, state, local. It's up to us to decide what our own destiny is, not the federal government to tell us. That's just a suggestion and an offer. And I appreciate you guys, not just doing what they say. Well, honestly, those are the 2 points I wanted to make. So thanks again. And yes, I did know Bobby Stamp. He was my neighbor. He was my friend. I liked the guy. He lived on 2nd Street for many years, and he even helped us bring a stove home one time. So yeah, I'd just like to say that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? You.
Jerry Helminiak, 267 Washington. On behalf of everyone that is concerned, I just want to thank each of you.
Please state your name.
Vicki Johnson, 256 First Avenue.
Thank you.
We've owned our house on First Avenue for about 15 years. We've retired, we've moved up here full-time. From the time that we started coming up to Manistee until we retired up here, there's been a drastic change in our neighborhood on the north side. I mean, the amount of the houses that used to have families and people in them now are either summer rental properties or landlords that don't take care of their properties, and you know, a couple of drug houses in our neighborhood and apartment complexes that aren't kept up, and then the new Hillcrest apartment complex that they have going over on the north side. I don't know how many people, I drove by that complex on my way here, for what I thought it was gonna be to how many buildings they actually crammed into that city block. That's gonna be so congested, I even think it would be a safety hazard to get in and out of there if a fire would occur, just by me driving by. I think our community does need affordable housing, but I think we need to look at what type of affordable housing we do need. Affordable housing for the elderly. We had, you know, the council, I think, presented something last year that I thought was going to be great by the senior center for affordable housing for the senior citizens. You know, I have several senior citizens in our neighborhood that might be needing that, you know, fairly soon. You know, look for some positive development and try to not have our neighborhood go backwards, but go forward.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to officials and staff. Mr. Bradford.
Nothing, Mayor, just to remind you that the new city manager, Bill Gamble, is going to start Monday morning. So we're excited to have him on board, and we'll try to get him a good orientation so he can hit the ground running.
Thank you. How's the audit going?
Field work is done. It went pretty well, so there's still a lot to do, but they're not here anymore, which is a good thing.
Thank you. Mr. Saylor.
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Heather.
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, now my eyes have to adjust. Mr. McCullough.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Zach. Or Mike.
Good evening. I would just like to address some of the things that were said tonight in regards to affordable housing. One of those being that it lowers property values. If you do a quick Google search, I encourage you to do one on your phone. There's many and much data out there that says there's no conclusive evidence to suggest that. There's actually some that suggest that it actually raises property values in the surrounding area. It's very much dependent on your community and what you live. So to make a blanket statement like that they're going to decrease property values is just not correct. So I do encourage people to do a Google search on that. I heard a lot of things tonight about, you know, the changing demographics of our city. I think it's really important that we look at our housing projects when they come in. One of those being low-income housing. We do need it. There's a need in this community for 552 rental units. The rent range is about $800 a month is what we're looking for. I'm not saying that the proposed unit was a good project or a bad project or anything like that, but keep in mind that these are needed. There's a lot of communities out there that do like townhouses or something that blends in better with like single family residential areas. One of these being like, I believe it's Springbrook out of Mount Pleasant. It's a very good example of a very well-planned community from a planning perspective. As we look over, you know, our plans and they come in, I encourage you to look over in other subsidized housing units and just say, hey, you know, what are they doing right, what do we like, what don't we like, and then present them. I know, Mick, we have a lot of conversations at the Planning Commission, but this is a desperate need. I know that you guys put money towards a housing director position through Housing North. I think that's a great start for like housing enterprise zones, especially in Maxwell Town. You know, these are things that we can look forward to putting those positions into. Looking at like duplexes and triplexes within these enterprise zones as a permitted use instead of requiring a special use. Our office is always open to any of you guys if you guys would like to discuss further, or if you have questions on our project. I know we've had a little bit of changeover on here, so we just, you know, we do work for you guys and we're always available to you. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Middleton.
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Let's see. Who's in the back row that's hiding? Fire Chief, Mark Cameron.
Nothing, thank you.
Police Chief, Josh.
Anything, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, did I miss anybody? Okay. All right. Council members. Mr. Bond.
I just have two things. I appreciate the citizens' comments and all you had to say. I gotta tell you, I'm sure Clinton felt a kick in the gut today. And I think your comments were well said, although they probably came off the cuff. I'm sure they weren't prepared. So well done with that, and I appreciate your comments. And in terms of Mr. Taylor's comments, I think that he makes a really good point. To automatically assume a negative behavior on a person who didn't demonstrate negative behavior is a disservice to our citizens who want to volunteer. And I know we're going to talk about having an ordinance that prevents them from volunteering. I think that's flawed, personally. Thank you.
Council Member Lundberg.
I appreciate, Mike, what you were just talking about there, and I totally agree. I do believe that there is a huge need for the housing. I personally felt like it seemed very rushed to make that decision and whatnot. And Clinton, I know you put a lot into it, but from my perspective, I just took this position on, and I spent 4 hours reading through everything I could see that was about this, and it just did not feel to me like I felt very rushed to try to make a decision like that was going to affect so many people. But Mike, I'm going to take you up on it. I'm going to come see you. I want to talk to you. I want more people to talk to you. I want to think about how do we do this in a way that is conducive for our community and supports the people that need it. I'm a teacher. I have a lot of families who could definitely use a house that they can afford. This is near and dear to my heart. So don't think that I don't want it. I think that needed a little more fleshing out before we can do anything. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
So I just have a comment on the housing. I work in housing. I find people houses on a daily basis. We do not need more low-income housing. We need actual affordable houses, townhomes, some people that can purchase. I don't think that we're turning our back on Manistee. I think that we're wanting you to up your standards and clean up the mess that's created over the low-income housing in Century Terrace, not build another area and just shift everybody over and move on to the next. I think that everybody that commented over here is 100% correct, and they are passionate about it, and we need to clean up the mess that we have before we create another low-income housing project. We need a developer in here that will build houses between 80,000 and 150,000 that people can purchase and live in. Not, we don't need a second Century Terrace at all. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'll start at the other end.
Yeah, so I was writing down Housing North when Mike had mentioned it. I think we need to stay on top of that. We do have a crisis for housing, and I want to get updates on what we're doing with that. We don't need another low income. We do need affordable. I do agree with that.
So you'll be getting something in my weekly update about Housing North. There's a little more information that's come out, so I'll make sure I provide that.
Okay. And then also with the uptake in COVID, is there any talk about COVID restrictions happening?
We've been monitoring it closely, and I've asked Fire Chief Mark Cameron to kind of be the point person on that since they deal with it on a daily basis. But as it stands right now, there's no more state requirements that have come out. CDC did slightly update their guidelines, I think just today or yesterday, but as it stands right now, it's just status quo, and we're monitoring the situation.
There's no talk about having to go back to virtual meetings or anything like that?
Not yet at this point, no.
All right.
Thanks, Aaron.
I just got a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank the chief of the fire department for the tour, for the pushing in the ambulance into the garage. It was quite interesting what happened over there. I appreciate you doing that, chief. The next thing is there any talk about, I've had a lot of requests for the clock on River Street. Anybody going to fix that?
Mr. McCooley, do you have any update on that?
Clockmaker around.
We have researched that and we have talked to the DDA about it. If I remember, it was many thousands of dollars to have that worked on. But I'll follow back up on that.
I remember when it worked, but people have asked me.
It's been a couple of years since it's been down.
I didn't know if it was going to be fixed or not.
Yeah, I'll follow back up.
Thank you. The other thing is with the Entry Terrace. I went over there years and years ago when I was on the police department. I covered all kinds of crimes over there. Things changed with the different people being allowed to move in there. And now with them trying to change it, I think that's great. The only problem I have is I think the property's in the wrong place. There has to be a better spot than on that corner where there's a lot of traffic. And I don't see where you're going to walk to someplace, no pharmacy there or anything. But that's my feelings.
Mr. Szymanski.
I agree. To me, the only reason that I would not second the proposal is because of the location of that property. I just didn't, as much as I want additional housing, the two things, first of all, I think the lot and how it was located would not be a benefit to the people that we would be moving there. Secondly, I'm concerned about the lack of a plan for the scattered housing, which I think was a perfectly wonderful idea to basically integrate our people within a larger community instead of housing them all in one small location in an apartment complex. The idea that somebody mentioned, the fact that these are properties that have a front door with a little porch and a backyard. Those are valuable things. And I never saw or heard of any specific plan of how do we get back to bringing that type of housing to our community. And I think that's more important. So those are the two reasons why I just could not in all good conscience say yes